Hey, this is Roaming Millennial, welcome back to my channel, and this video is going to be a serious one. Today, I would like to talk about fatherless homes and the children that come from them. The idea that moms should absolutely be there for their kids is something that our society very much promotes, acknowledging the role men have to play in their children's lives, which I think is currently being overlooked and taken for granted. And in fact, the number of children out there who are growing up without fathers is honestly, in my opinion, the most concerning social issue right now. Because yes, fathers matter that much. So since I don't think we can solve a problem without acknowledging it first, here are 5 quick things that I think everyone should know about fatherless homes, starting with the fact that they're becoming more and more common. As widespread as fatherless and more generally single-parent households are nowadays, it wasn't always like this. In 1960, only 9% of American children were living in single-parent households, but in 1980, the rate had grown to 19%. And in 2013, a full 34%, that is 1 in 3 children were living with just one parent. As you would probably expect, most of these children are raised by their mothers instead of their fathers. And today, over 17 million kids, that's almost 1 in 4 children in the country, are living in father-absent homes. The most commonly cited reasons for this exploding epidemic usually include things like greater social acceptance of non-traditional families, the devaluation of marriage, changes in custody laws and hearings that tend to disadvantage fathers, and government benefits that subsidize single-parent households. In any case, this is definitely a complex issue that has many contributing factors, as is abundantly clear when we take a look at our second point, which is that fatherless homes are more prevalent among certain groups. Although rates of fatherlessness have been increasing across the board, the issue is more serious among specific segments of the population. The most talked about differences are probably the ones that exist between races. And it's true that black children are much more likely to grow up without their fathers than Hispanic or white children. But what's less commonly talked about are the divides that exist between socioeconomic groups. Income and education level are huge factors that affect single motherhood rates, and therefore the odds of a child being raised in a home without their father. Lower income and less educated women have the greatest chance of being single mothers. And this makes our next point, that children in fatherless homes are more likely to grow up poor and uneducated, sadly no surprise. Unfortunately, almost 1 in 2 children in fatherless households live in poverty. This is in the United States, which is a shocking statistic, especially when compared to the fact that the same can be said for only 10% or 1 in 10 children from married couples. Now that's not to say that single mothers aren't doing a good job. It's just obviously harder to provide for a child when you're just one person with 1 income instead of 2 people with 2 incomes. These statistics show that fathers actually being in their children's lives has a measurable impact on their well-being. And it's not just financial. The influence of fathers can also be seen in the fact that 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. And these kids who grow up without their fathers are also 40% more likely to have to repeat a grade while they're in school. The next thing you should know is that in addition to on average being more disadvantaged financially and academically, fatherless children are also more likely to have behavioral issues. There are plenty of people out there who grew up without their fathers that are now well-balanced adults that lead productive and happy lives. No one's denying that. However, coming from a fatherless home has still been shown to significantly increase a child's likelihood of delinquency. Children from fatherless homes account for 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, and most seriously, 63% of youth suicides. And seeing as how around 85% of the current prison population grew up without their fathers, and that 71% of pregnant teens come from single-parent households, I think it's safe to say that for some children, growing up without both their parents can have effects that last their entire lives, not just their childhoods. Finally, this brings us to our last point, which is that this trend needs to stop with millennials. Now, even though we didn't start this problem, my hope is that we millennials can be the generation that begins to reverse the growing amount of fatherless homes. I know there's no accounting for the endless number of challenges life throws at us, and that things don't always work out how we want them to. But even then, fellow young people, as those who will be parenting the next generation, we need to commit ourselves to being there for our children and to finding a partner who'll do the same, regardless of our gender. The fatherless generation, but that same label doesn't need to apply to our children.